We the people. It's a bold idea, but let's be honest. This democracy was not designed for all of us. For generations, everyday people have worked to push this place closer to its promise. A lot of them were the very people excluded from we the people in the first place. And yet, even in the current chaos, this work continues. I'm Baratunde Thurston, and this is In the Making, a new series from PolicyLink about how we continue this work, redesigning this nation so that it's a true democracy that finally works for everyone. It can be done, but it's our work to do. Welcome back, y'all.
It's good to be here.
So we have talked about how people are frustrated with government and that they have a vision and some values of what they want government to be. A lot of times, many of us think about laws, policies, and I know y'all think a little deeper than that that's not still getting at the foundation of the house, that sometimes even that can feel like patchwork. We're in this big chaotic time, and to take time to envision what governing would be is hard for most of us. But PolicyLink has some thoughts on this matter. And in particular, you have this framing and phrasing, governing for all. I'm used to hearing about liberty and justice for all, equal protection under the law, but governing for all. Why governing? And what would that mean to govern for all?
Well, for me personally, it's been a harsh realization of my whole professional career.
Harsh.
Yeah, like that the charity and the programs and services were never aggregating up to the scale of impact that I thought I could achieve. So let's take Promise Neighborhoods as an example. Promise Neighborhoods is a federal program that PolicyLink designed for the Obama administration. It was modeled after the Harlem Children's Zone. Yeah. How do you support children from the time they're conceived to the time they enter the workforce? Well, on a good day in America, we were serving 300,000 kids. But there's probably 20 million kids in America. You see my point? Yeah. So at its best, it's charity work. And it wasn't dealing with all of the other design challenges in a community. So for example, if you have a performance metric like we want to make sure that children are academically proficient, that's a great metric. But if you're poisoning them with lead in the water, you're disrupting their cognitive development. That's a governing challenge. So what we started seeing is that even when we're doing really good programs and services work, charity work, the design of our nation, the governing behaviors are undercutting it every day.
There's what you described sounded also like not just a program, but a solid policy.
It's very solid.
I mean, many of us have seen policies put in place and then undone. Yes. We've seen laws put in place and then unlawed, right? By a court or by an executive or by the legislature, being like, we don't believe in that thing anymore. So how do you sustain past the tug and pull of laws and counter laws and policies and not policies and a bunch of lawsuits where it seems to most of us like, well, I guess that's something that they got to figure out in the courts and we just are spectating. How does governing differ from laws, lawsuits, and even good policy?
Yeah. Well, first Michael shared his example with Promise Neighborhoods. At the national level, I was having to learn the same tough lesson. In New Orleans, we had a citywide economic opportunity strategy focused on African-American men because the data had shown us they were left out, kept out of our economy. And so, all the best practices, we can design career pathways and we can create a new local hire policy, one of the first in the American South. And we saw the needle move, and then less than 5 years, it slips back. And it took me arriving at PolicyLink inside of my grief, then meeting up with other leaders like Michael, who are inside of their grief about like, wait a minute, we did all the best practice stuff. And even made a difference. It wasn't that was a waste of time, right? We actually improved people's lives, but the change doesn't hold. And so even for the 300,000 kids, for the thousands of Black men in New Orleans, the next generation of folks just filled their seats. So then you're just treading water at best. And so I think what we started talking about was like, okay, well then that will never be enough. Each one of us at the end of our careers, at best, will have supported our families well, maybe even gotten shiny awards from people who are like, oh, they're the community champion, right? But would anything be different in terms of the trajectory of this nation? No. And so for us, it was like, oh, governing started to come out of the realization that, well, if our democracy, if our economy was never built for everyone's thriving, that is a design challenge. It's like, wait, is there another universe, another nation, perhaps another version of the United States in which we believe that all of us can thrive together? And then once we get to a shift in our consciousness that allows us to say, yes, that's possible, then the place that you play that out is at the altitude of governing, which is different. Like, we've been writing policies for 26 years about all. But we have, like, the next generation of our work is to shift the governing framework. Inside of the 14th Amendment, there is a promise that says that there's an affirmative duty of government. Affirmative duty of government means that instead of us having to prove that we have a right to something,
or have been denied something. Right? Because
in our real world today, the only way that my right to housing is delivered to me is that I have to prove to you that I was discriminated against. Like, I have to prove to you it was kept from me, usually have to go to court and convince someone that it was kept from me before I can realize that right. And to Michael's point, he said this in a couple of our conversations, we asked the people with the least amount of resources, the least amount of time to then have to wage that fight, right? Affirmative duty of government means I don't have to prove that I've been discriminated against. Instead, it's just my right. The government is proactively, affirmatively acting on delivering safe, affordable housing in this instance to everyone inside these shores. I'm not sure we can find our way through to all without really naming the complexity, like what the tension is underneath. So the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were post-Civil War, post-slavery amendments. And it was the nation's best attempt to correct the treatment of Black people in America following slavery. But those amendments also make possible everyone's thriving. But even as we've just started testing, wait a minute, the 14th Amendment might get us to this all consciousness, this all commitment. As we move around the country, there's a set of people who are like, we might need a different solution because that one was based about Black people. And, as a Latina woman, I don't see myself in that. Or, love that for the Black people, but I'm queer. And so, and so why I'm sharing that is because cognitively, there's this angst that we can't get out of this Black-white paradigm, even as we try to get to the all. Even to your point, your question of Michael is like, but the words say, they're written right there. Why isn't it so? Some of it is about what was built around it was insufficient. And then some of it is that we've now been convinced in the separation of each other, right? Back to winners and losers, that thing, that my liberation can't be tied to yours, right? Like, we can't all move through this thing together. And so if equal protection is about the same laws applying to everybody, everywhere, and it comes out of this amendment it does have a history about it, but it opened the door for all of us. First, we have to believe that we could all walk through that door. I think that's the first piece. And then the second is, I think we are trapped in this mental model of we have to win one thing at a time. We got it, housing, water. infrastructure, economy. And so despite the transformational model that's before us right now, which is like, we don't have to pick any one element of destruction. We can do it all at the same time. I think we also are having to stretch our minds to believe that there's an intervention that could cover all of us and all the things.
I love that. And I think something clicked for me, this idea of sequencing on issues or on demographics.
Yes.
It's like, okay, so we got to deal with climate before we can deal with the economy. Well, no, we got to deal with the economy. What if we dealt with life? Right? Well, we got to deal with Black liberation before we can get to the queer liberation. We got to deal with the gender and the male-female thing before we can start talking about colors. And what about the religious discrimination? And what about this? What about all?
And what if we just said, what are the full rights and privileges of our citizenship?
Yeah, of everybody.
And then go in.
And here's why this is so important for us now to have this as a part of the nation building agenda. Because what you just said, even Black folks don't agree. Yeah. Right? You get into a Black conversation about the queer community, you got problems. You see my point? So taking it piecemeal doesn't help because it doesn't matter. As the nation changes, there's always going to be groups who see someone else as less than or not deserving of, let's just say. And so this is the problem. We've not agreed on what equal protections really means. And we haven't agreed on who's included in the all. So you've got a whole legal frame that is not designed for these two big questions. Do we really mean equal protection for everybody? We've not answered that question in the courts. Do we really mean all? We've not answered that question in the courts. And so when we try to do this work, it has no legal basis. It is goodwill. And goodwill doesn't hold in court.
And it's run out.
And it's run out. And so that's why you see laws being rolled back. That's why you see people can change things quickly within the administration. So in order for it to be durable and enforceable, we've got to answer these tough questions that our generation now has to deal with, right? Otherwise, this is just nice work. And it's too nice not to be codified in law.
There's one other piece about equal protection I know people don't want to talk about right now.
Ooh, I love talking about things people don't want to talk about.
So I was reading about just revisiting South Africa's history. Like they had to form a new national identity, right? Post-apartheid. And we will have to do the same, I believe. That's part of this journey. And so was reading something about like, as they were on this journey around a new national identity, a multicultural one, it was like, they immediately struggled with, well, even in this new multicultural us, are we required to find ourselves by now treating immigrants as less than? Like, do we need a new less than in order to make our identities hold? Equal protection also, it's not just about citizens. It is how we treat everybody, everywhere. So inside of equal protection, that means that we can't disappear people from Chicago and house them in the backwaters of Louisiana and treat them inhumanely because we know no one's watching. All of that is inside of equal protection. So it's not, I think the reason that this matters is because it does come back to this question about our national identity and how we're willing, like, who are we really? And to your point, are the rules for everyone and how we, and equal treatment and no, cruel and unusual punishment. That's not a thing inside of equal protection for anyone, shore to shore. So what I love about the 14th Amendment and this piece about equal protection is that it really does push us to the allness of our aspiration.
So we have talked a bit about equal protection and this idea that it's up to the government to ensure fair treatment, not just on people to prove that you were treated unfairly. The next step after that would be rules and laws that actually make sense, that are established well and that are that the laws themselves are applied fairly and nobody has any kind of favoritism. So what would it mean? How could rewriting the rules so they are more universal in terms of the legal enforcement, how could that change our outcomes? How could that move us closer to a democracy that works for all and away from this perception in reality that the system's rigged? It might be obvious. It might be a very simple
I think
answer.
one of the things that's been missing is that that we ask our institutions to do, but we don't necessarily ask our government to do, is like declare the result. Like, what's the result that you're responsible for? Because then we're going to measure it.
Right.
Now, you know, any nonprofit who gets philanthropic resources has to do that.
Yeah.
Typically on a quarterly basis.
Put those reports together.
Right?
Yeah.
But we don't ask that of our government the same way.
And that's the biggest nonprofit there is.
Right?
And we are all donors.
Yes, we're all donors. And so I think that will immediately shift the outcomes.
Yeah.
Just by requiring, like, nope, this is the result that we expect, right? From this governing institution. Show us your receipts. And you shouldn't have to dig so hard because we should also be able to see in our local communities the receipts.
Why do you think it's important not just to have a government affirmatively governing for all and laws and rules that apply to everyone, but enforcement that is also equal?
Because of human nature. You know, it becomes to Ashleigh's point earlier, it becomes very hard to plan and even have a sense of safety and security in a predatory world. And, you know, Robert Heilbronner calls capitalism economic warfare. It feels like it, you know, when you're on the bottom end of it. And so you need the enforcement to curb the shadow sides of ourselves and the shadow sides of our government and our nation, because they exist too, right? Yeah. And so that's why I would say you need it, because we are highly flawed beings, and the system that we operate doesn't necessarily bring out our higher angels. Yeah.
We also talked about trust before. If you ever been in a relationship where somebody keeps promising you something and it never comes through, well, what are we doing? At least for me, I'm no longer in a relationship with you, right? And I think that's true in terms of our citizenship as well. Like, you can't ask me, right, to trust governing institutions that never deliver. Or, okay, they did on that sunny Tuesday back in 2005, and then after that, I'm looking for them, right? This thing called democracy doesn't actually work unless there's a trusted relationship between the citizenry and the governing institution. So, and enforcement is the way that you prove, like that you show your receipts.
Yeah, I love that too. And I think if you don't demonstrate a willingness to enforce, then there is nothing binding us.
That's right. That's right.
Right? It's like, then why should I follow the rules? If they are not required to, and you're going to let them skate, then what are we doing here? Yeah.
That's right.
And so I want there to be, I think the optimist and the love-filled, seeing the best in people wants us to be bound just by love.
That's right.
Right? And good tidings toward all. But that shadow is real. And it's in me too. That's right. I'm a human being. It's not just the government. We all are capable of not living up to our promises and keeping our word. So what would proactive enforcement of equal law, how would that be different from what we have now? Why might that be better than what we have now?
Well, just take a very practical one, the certifications that city, counties, and states do around fair housing. Cities, counties, and states in America get hundreds of thousands of dollars to provide decent, safe, and affordable housing to people who meet a certain income level. And yet, many cities take that money and do what they want to do with it and don't provide that. And they allow the landlords to discriminate and cause all sorts of harm. Now, back to what Ashleigh said earlier. If you already are resource constrained, do you really have money to find a private investigator or an attorney to help put a case together and then try to take it to court? You can't even get off for court. You see my point? So you've already signed a legally binding certification with the federal government when you took the money. Now, the government should do its job to enforce it. I know this because I worked at HUD in this department. And HUD will say, well, it's better for them to have their money than not to have it at all. And so they don't want to enforce it because they don't want it to be on television. HUD took back money from poor communities. Well, it's being taken back anyway because it's not being applied to them. Right. And so every day we're putting hundreds of billions of dollars out into the marketplace with no expectation of an outcome that would be positive. And that is a very real one right there, where if it was affirmative, HUD would be doing the investigations at scale, rooting out bad landlords, bad Section 8 landlords, all of the above, but it doesn't do that.
Yeah, there's a very similar example in the economic development space, right? So whenever cities, jurisdictions get large contracts, we built a new, beautiful airport, right? Proactive compliance means that as the project is proceeding, moving forward, someone is paying attention. Wait, have you even built a process to create workforce opportunities? Or have you even built a process to engage small businesses in this development project? Yeah. Okay, well, you have, cool. So then now you get to move to the next step, right? Have you contracted with them? Or is the money flowing to those subcontractors the way that you promised, right? Our work is being paid the wages that you promised in the federal contract for the airport. Okay, if you do that, then you can move to the next step. That's very different because it allows you to stop, right? When Michael says stop doing harm, then the moment that you see harm, it's like, oh, no, stop the project. You can't proceed, and big general contractor, big developer, you can't get your check because you haven't fulfilled your promise. Typically what we do, which is not proactive compliance, is we do the $1 billion build, and afterwards we say, oh, Lord, well, 35% of the companies were supposed to be small businesses.
Couldn't find them.
Only got 4%. And then we all gnash our teeth and cuss each other out or whatever. But the money's gone. The project's done. Yeah. And so proactive compliance is a real tool in this future United States, in our future governing institutions, because not only do you declare the result on the front end, which we now know is essential, but now you track. As the process is proceeding, are they doing it? And if they're not, to Michael's point, stop everything.
So what do you say to folks who say to that, that sounds like big government? Constantly looking over somebody's shoulder, enforcement groups, investigation. I just want to build this building, and now I got to answer to some HUD desk jockey who wants to make sure I'm doing my math right.
The reason why we say we don't want big government often is because folks are seeing the pot as finite. And that may be true. But then let's have a conversation about the type of society we want to have. Even at the local level, most people would be startled to know that 50% of most budgets in the General Revenue Fund is going to policing. But you said you wanted all that policing, so now you don't have libraries and you can't get that grocery store because they ain't got money for tax breaks for it or anything like that, right? So think about what we're doing right now. The biggest investment in American society has been in ICE.
Oh, they found so much money.
Signing
bonuses,
everything.
$50,000, $60,000, advertisements on major sporting events.
And that's the irony of this game that we're playing with ourselves, is that we don't see what's happening in plain sight. We have basically said that the thing that this nation will invest in is not its children's future, not its intellect. And so we've now made hundreds of billions of dollars of bets, not to raise the most educated kids who will be the most innovative market creators in the nation. We've created the conditions to have to lock them up because the system needs now a product. The system needs the human bodies so these folks can justify their existence. And we've never stopped to ask, what happens when you set that in motion? So this is why we've got to get to the affirmative duty of outcomes. Because when you're not thinking about outcomes, you can produce this type of society and spend this type of money that will inure zero benefit to Americans.
So I'd like to do a time travel exercise with y'all and invite you into the future. Roughly 6, 7 generations. Sorry. 7 generations, 150, 200 years or so. In a world where we have collectively agreed to govern for all, where we have established a set of laws and accountability around that, and equal enforcement of those. Equal protection and equal enforcement are this proactive thing, and we're living in it. What does that world look like? Give me the experience of one of your descendants in that 7th generation future.
The first thing that comes to mind for me, I just hear laughter and joy. I hear music. I come from a musical place, right? And in New Orleans, it is not uncommon just to be driving down the street and to hear someone playing a horn, right? That we get back to that New Orleans. And the reason that something that feels so, for me, spiritual or certainly cultural is a signal is because it means that that child, that little girl, that little boy's family had enough resource. Someone had enough resource for her to hold a trumpet, for him to have a tuba, and to have the time to be able to play, like to practice, to play. It also is a signal of safety. When you hear music outside, that means that that child is standing on a street corner playing that horn, right? And so first I hear just the laughter and joy that comes with not feeling stressed and burdened, weighed down. And then I hear that loose music being played, stray notes and all, right? Because it means that child is supported by a community that has been able to invest in their interest, their passion, their curiosity about learning something new.
I co-sign on that. I love that joy, music were the early indicators, and they were indicators. It's kind of like in the future, we would measure the health by the resonance of the trumpet, not a GDP number. Because the trumpet would tell us more about the health of a community than economic output ever could. And I think I would weave in and add to that there is, in that 7 generations from now, we're having a much deeper relationship with the earth than we tend to acknowledge now, that we feel we have time now, that maybe the tree is playing in that second line, right? Or people are inspired by the messages from the trees, and we have reconnected sort of vertically from humanity to nature and back and forth again, and not just across our human divides. Is there anything else you want to add, either of you, to round out this episode, this conversation?
I would just say, just for the listeners, viewers of this, that this is our world to create, that it's possible. That's it.
Yeah. So ask yourself what you want to create. You know, what's governing for all look like for you? And as stressed as you might be, if you've taken enough time to get this far in this video, then take another beat with someone you're close to and ask some of these questions that we've been talking about together. Because this table alone ain't gonna do it.
That's right.
It's every table like it that will get us there. Thank you. That's a wrap on our episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. And please make sure to tune into all the episodes of In the Making.